Welcome back to everyone. We are talking about climate change, and happy to have the panel we have up here. We have Professor Dodd Galbreath with Lipscomb University. He founded the Institute for Sustainable Practice, and we have Gary Garfield, past CEO of Bridgestone Americas from 2010 to 2016. And a good discussion as we kind of kicked things off. Let's go to Joe on line one. Hello, Joe.
Hi, how you doing tonight? Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Okay, thanks for the professor and Gary. Good to see you here. I mean, I think most people agree that the climate changes. It just has always changed. It's been going on for, since the world began. As the Earth gets older, the climate changes. My issue with the climate change is, I mean, we talk about recorded history. So we talk about what's been recorded. I mean, we don't look back and say, well, you know what, the glaciers were receding, so the cavemen started putting their fires out because they were worried about the glaciers receding. And, I mean, the climate's always been changing. It's not a big thing. In the 70s, I mean, you guys know, they talked about greenhouse gases and aerosols were going to lead us to freeze to death because it was opening up the ozone layer, and we're all going to die because of that. It just seems to go on and on. As far as China and Saudi Arabia, I mean, yeah, if they're paying $3 and we're paying $1, of course China's paying $3 because that feeds like a family for a day. Over here, we're not paying that much, but it's because I think we all understand that the climate has continued to change. I mean,
so you don't think that it is man-made? You don't think is that what you're saying, that it's always happened, it's not man-made? I think we can find solutions in burning fossil fuels. Like my father was with Westinghouse for 38 years, and they got a contract for $1 million to find a cheaper way to burn coal and to find a more efficient way to burn it without blowing up the atmosphere or whatever. And so there's ways we can do it and continue to burn fossil fuels. It's just we need to put more money into that put money into like some other form of energy. All right, well, let's talk about that. Thanks for the call, Joe. You can comment on that. What do you think?
Well, we really appreciate the comment, first of all. I mean, we can't start this dialogue unless people share their concerns and their beliefs. The challenge is that our atmosphere currently consists of mostly gases that are not carbon. Carbon is less than 0.5% of our atmosphere, and because it's there, and because water vapor as a global warming chemical exists in our atmosphere as well, that allows our atmosphere to operate in a healthy way. That's why we use the greenhouse effect. One analogy I've shared with my children recently is that we've all gone past a greenhouse in the summertime and seen the glass windows on the roof open and all the doors flung open because they're trying to let the heat out in a healthy way. That's the way our atmosphere works when carbon is a small component of the atmosphere. As carbon grows in its accumulation in the atmosphere, which chiefly comes from burning fossil fuels, taking carbon that's buried in fossil fuel in a compressed form and releasing it as a gas that's highly mixable in our atmosphere and highly chemically reactive. That heat trapping activity is like rolling those windows closed on that greenhouse roof in the middle of an August day and closing those doors. The heat cannot get out. We all have this experience with hot cars in the summertime and hot houses. It's very common sense. But it's hard to understand how that invisible gas can be making that happen. But as I said earlier, NASA has proven that there are planets that have high levels of carbon in their atmosphere, and they have very high temperatures.
How frustrated are you that message? How frustrated are you that we may get a couple of calls from people who say, I don't know that I believe all of this, or the climate's changing, but it's not man-made, or whatever we may get. How are you frustrated by that?
Actually, no. It's because I work at Lipscomb. I work in a faith-based environment, and so I'm taught to love my neighbor, and actually that means I'm supposed to be patient with my neighbor as well. And Gary and I know because we met through roundtable dialogues discussing climate change, helping people who didn't understand climate change come to a conclusion in a healthy way where we're not fighting and throwing things at each other across the table. We know that this is probably the biggest challenge the human race has ever faced. And frankly, if I were the creator and I were going to create a challenge that would encourage everybody to love their neighbor all over the world, climate change is a pretty big opportunity to pull that off or start fresh.
And now, are you frustrated when you hear people skeptical or not, thinking that this is a big problem or whatever the case? Are you frustrated? What do you think?
Well, I'm sure there's a little bit of frustration on my part, just as people are frustrated with me who don't believe climate change is real. But what I would say to Joe is look at the draft environmental impact statement that the Trump administration prepared. Think about the fact that 97 or 98% of the world's scientists say what we are experiencing is not normal. In fact, we know that Nashville doesn't get snow anymore. We see the flooding. The 10 hottest years on record have all taken place in this century, just in the last 20 years. Go to the NASA website. NASA is really good at what they do. They're incredibly smart people, far smarter than I could ever hope to be. And it will explain what is happening with climate change in a way I can understand it and in a way most people can understand it. And finally, think about the risks. If right now, Tennessee gets about maybe 10 days a year where it's too dangerous to be outside. The projections are that by the middle of this century, we'll get about 55 such days a year where it's too dangerous to be outside. Kids won't be able to play outside much of the summer. Farmlands are going to either dry up or be inundated with water. We're going to have shortages with our food supply. We have an immigration crisis on the southern border. A big part of that crisis is climate change. Many of those people are coming from Honduras. Honduras has had an unbelievable, massive 5-year drought. They can't grow food, and it's because of climate change. And they're looking for a place where they can survive. That's just the beginning. As sea levels rise, as places get too hot, we're going to have mass migration from outside this country, people trying to get in. And within this country, people going to places, Florida as it gets submerged with water, to places where they can live. If we don't deal with this, we're just going to have a huge, huge problem.
Okay, and it shows how things are connected. All right, let's go to Granger. Hello, Granger.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, go right ahead.
Thank you for having this show. First of all, I want to say that just because I think it's important to get this message out. I'm a Red Cross volunteer, and I go to various places where there are disasters. I went to Florida a year before last with hurricanes. I've been to California the last 2 years with the wildfires. I believe that we each need to take personal responsibility to reduce our own impact on the environment. But I have friends, like I met a nurse in 17 in Santa Rosa, California, where part of her town, hundreds of houses in her town burned up. Later, she served with me when we went to the Paradise Fair, where 27,000 homes and 88 people died. And people don't seem to get even though she's seen the impact and experienced it in her community, she doesn't seem to understand that she needs to take an individual change to reduce her impact. And I just wonder, how do we deal with that? Are you guys as frustrated as I am that,
All right, how do we deal with that on the individual level? I appreciate that, Granger. What do y'all think?
Well, it is a huge challenge. I think it's going to require an enormous amount of patience, Ben, on all of our part to sort through it. I keep going back to many of the points that Gary has raised, and many of the lessons that many of us have learned about history. When we were confronted with a major threat that was clear and present in World War II, we mobilized all of our manufacturing energy in this country to focus on dealing with the crisis. And then we created partnerships all over the world to deal with the crisis. And despite enormous devastation all across Europe and in China and in Japan after the war was over, then we came together and we rebuilt everything. So we know how to do this. What we don't know how to do is how to deal with a problem that's invisible, that's very complex, and that's very divisive right now. But I do think that the best of human nature, the best angels of our nature are going to emerge from this if we will all just begin first talking and begin looking for those solutions that do make sense.
And there's no doubt I'm seeing people taking more responsibility. You're seeing individual restaurants try and do this or that. I mean, you're seeing people change, and people are trying to do some things individually. I guess with you here, it gives us a good opportunity to talk about the business side of it. And so it's great. Granger's asking about what can individuals do, and that's great. And do what individuals can do. But I'm very focused on what businesses can do. And I'm just concerned, will businesses rise to rise to the occasion when profits are on the line and that kind of thing. And so as a former businessman, what do you say? Is it, I guess, allay my concerns?
Sure. So I think businesses on the whole are doing an enormous amount that most people don't know. Just by way of example, Walmart has started a program, a couple of years ago, they started a program to reduce their carbon greenhouse gas emissions through their supply chain by 1 billion metric tons. That's huge. And they are determined to reach it. Some years ago, they started a program which reduced their carbon output through their supply chain by, I don't remember the exact figure, it was 20 or 30 million metric tons. And they got that, and now they're going bigger. Alphabet, which is Google's parent, has invested in renewable energy that provides the amount of electricity equivalent to the electricity it uses annually. And other companies, Unilever has 26 brands that are completely 100% renewable.
Now, is that out of the goodness of their heart, or is there a business case for it? Are they doing it because it's the right thing, or are they doing it because it's going to increase their bottom line?
I think both. They recognize, most business leaders today recognize the problem we are facing. And if we don't deal with it, it's going to be a bigger problem down the road for their business in most situations. So that's one thing. Secondly, they're positioning their company for where the future is going to be, not where the past is, but where the future is going to be. So they're doing both. Some 9,000 companies now provide information on how climate change will affect their business and strategies they are developing to lessen or eliminate the impact climate change will have on their business.
And that's part of what you're all about, right?
Well, there are external pressures on business as well. On Sunday, the New York Times published an article that Moody's had purchased a climate risk data company because Moody's rates bonds for businesses and for governments and other institutions. And so there's a risk. Gary was talking about, this is a bet we can't afford to lose. This is not something we should take lightly. And bonding agencies are taking notice. Insurance agencies are taking notice of all the risks with all of these intense storm events that we've had. Houston, Texas experienced 2 500-year storm events last year. That's going to have a huge effect on flood insurance in that area. So there are really practical pressures. And then consumers and investors participate in shareholder meetings and board meetings, and they're asking their companies to make sure that their investments grow over time. As Gary mentioned, they want to see the company look for the next best thing in the future that has a lower risk and a higher profit. Free fuel has a higher profit. But consumers themselves, all of us, are part of this challenge. If we continue to buy products that don't reward business behavior for investing in sustainability, then we're part of the problem.
We need to start thinking about these things. All right, we're going to take a break. Cheryl and Dennis and Lucy, hold on. And if you want to call in, there's the number. 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.